Council members, we're ready to do the criminal sheriff's office. I mean, the sheriff, I'm sorry, the high sheriff, as I like to call.
Welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for waiting. You were worried about getting here too late because you were scheduled for early, and you had to delay because you had an audience with the First Lady.
Yes.
We're all jealous, and but we know you represented us well. So
Thank you. She gave a great speech.
Good. Did you ask for money?
I didn't get that close.
Okay, no, serious. Okay, now you may begin. You want to introduce the table? We know them, but the viewing public doesn't.
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam President and members of the City Council. I am here with Julie Langham, Comptroller, Chief Danny Lombard, Chief of Operations, and Colonel Jerry Urson, who is the commander of the Intake Center and the Electronic Monitoring Program. We also have some people in the audience that can assist as well. We operate 7 different facilities, and in addition to that have 4 administrative buildings. Our electronic monitoring program, which averages between 110 to 114 people, last year has been operating at its capacity, and I think you heard a little bit about that today. It is, in addition to being an alternative to incarceration, it's also a net money saver to the City Council and to the City of New Orleans. The Sheriff's Harmony House is a place where supervised visitation and safe exchanges can occur between parents that can no longer live together. Last year, we did 375 exchanges, 475 visitations, I should say year to date. Our reentry program, which is a program that prepares people that have been incarcerated to be released, since its inception has had 350 graduates. Our Day Reporting Center, which is another alternative to incarceration, has had 9 graduates, 167 individuals graduated, and that is also a successful program. 129 of those people have not been rearrested. Our GED programs, we've had since 2009, 94 have been tested, 75 have successfully completed the GED tests. Now, we also have other programs, our intensive incarceration program, which is where we provide instruction and GED preparation for females, the Curfew Center that we operate in conjunction with the New Orleans Police Department at one of our facilities. It provides for a safe place for the police to bring someone. It is not overnight housing. Our DARE program that is in the schools, teaching young people about the dangers of drugs. Our crime activity patrols, where we do proactive patrols and warrants in coordination with the New Orleans Police Department. And the HIV testing program, where we are reimbursed for HIV testing, and that improves the care and attention that we can provide to people that are HIV. Wanted to say a few things about some of the other programs that we have. We have the Alcoholic Anonymous program that comes in, the Narcotic Anonymous program. We partner, as I said, on the GED with both Delgado and with the Orleans Parish School Board. Our partnerships with the Department of Public Safety and Corrections for the Day Reporting Center and the Reentry Program, the HIV counseling and testing, a partnership that we have with the Office of Public Health, and I mentioned already our electronic monitoring program, the community service program, where we work in partnership with agencies like the Algiers Development District, the Warren McDaniels Transitional Work Center, where individuals who have 18 months or less in a suitable record can start to earn a salary and build an employment record. Our Young Marines program, youth between 8 and 16 are enrolled for drills, games, field trips, and continuing education. The Great Body Shop is in addition to the DARE program. It's a school-based program which covers drug prevention, health, emergency situations, nutrition, and other topics. The West Bank Major Crimes Task Force, deputies assigned to this task force focus on major crimes and narcotic enforcement on the West Bank, and the U.S. Marshal Task Force, where we focus on the apprehension of violent criminals in the greater New Orleans area. We're also a certified GED testing center, and in addition to that, we have education dorms at several of our facilities, library services, and wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have. Last year, 199 of our employees, we have roughly about 650 employees separated. That's really a very difficult turnover rate to deal with. Our pay starting at $9.69 an hour, 12-hour shifts, 4 and 2 schedules where they don't have a guaranteed weekend off, most of them, and every 6 weeks they have to go from working the day shift to working the night shift. We really have to do something about increasing the salaries. The per diem is just way too low. Whenever anyone talks about the per diem and I tell them what it is, they almost burst out laughing. $22.39 is not going to cut it. I told you in my letter to you that it's going to force us into court. And trying to avoid that, we've been doing everything that we can to cut costs, to pull back, to work harder and smarter, but it's really getting to be very, very difficult. The facility maintenance, most of the buildings are owned by the City of New Orleans. We have 1 elevator working at the House of Detention. We have none working at the Orleans Parish Prison. We continue to incur costs that exceed the revenues that we get. We did get some help with the court services, and of course we appreciate that. The medical costs continue to exceed. Any one of us knows that prescription costs have been going up, and we have to bear that cost. So prescription cost increasing really gives us a lot of problems from the money side. We are seeking an increase in the per diem up to what the state pays, roughly $27. One of the things that sort of put me back a little bit was that we've had a decrease recommended for electronic monitoring. Electronic monitoring saves money. It's an alternative to incarceration. It's something that I think, as I recommended in my letter to you all, that we ought to increase, that we ought to be looking at putting more into this, giving people an opportunity to continue to be productive and not just not being in jail. So I could go on, but I know you have questions, and with that, I'll answer any questions that you have, members of the council.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'm just going to make one statement, and turn it over to Ms. Guidry first. Electronic monitoring was talked about by anyone in the criminal justice system that's been here, with great accolades to the way you have improved it. And for those of us that were here before you did it, and when it was tried and how it was tried, and the failures that occurred in it, really, really appreciate what you've done. If that's under Colonel Urson, I'm not surprised, and I'm I'm thrilled to say thank you. And yes, we do need a lot more of it. That's where we can still save lives, especially young children, young men, especially young men. And so, as we've heard from several courts, 3 courts now have told us this. So, thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the council. Ms. Guidry.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Sheriff.
Good afternoon.
And
Good afternoon.
all of you. All right. I want to first start with a couple of things. The state pays, having to do with revenue, the state pays $26.60 per prisoner, correct?
Just about that. Yes, ma'am.
And that is that all the state pays to the sheriff's office for any purpose? And in other words, having to do with the prisoners, do they give you a separate amount for medical costs? Do they give you a separate amount for any other costs having to do with the prisoners?
Well, the actual cost that they provide on a per diem is like $24 a day, so they provide $2 for medical cost.
Okay, so that brings it to a total of $26.60 is my understanding. And what I want to make a point of here is that the city pays $22.39, but it also pays $3.2 million a year in medical costs, which is based on 2,000 prisoners, $4.38 a day, which brings the city's payment for prisoners up to $26.77, which is right at what the state pays.
Well, Councilmember, big difference.
Okay.
Because we do not have, and Dr. Gore, our medical director, is here who can speak to this, but we do not have the same or even close to the same incidence of medical cost with state inmates. Any state inmate who is experiencing some sort of a medical situation isn't kept here for any reason. For example, we have people that are on kidney dialysis, and with the continued closure of the hospital, they have to go to private places for treatment. We actually have, because this is a back and forth thing. We have a couple of inmates that are pretrial inmates that are in state facilities because they've actually were disciplinary problems, and they have better access in the state facilities to the kidney dialysis. The state bills us back for the cost of the kidney dialysis. Now, it's cheaper than what we have to pay at a private facility, but there's a vast difference in terms of the pharmaceuticals and the medical testing and the treatment for the pretrial inmates. We get, and I know you just heard from the municipal court judges, we get very sick people that have not been going to the doctor on a regular basis, don't go on an irregular basis. So I'd love to sit down with you and show you, but the costs are not comparable.
Okay. And a lot of what municipal court is now dealing with is state misdemeanor charges, too. So if someone has a state charge and they're in jail pre-trial, the city is paying for them?
That's correct. The city pays until the person is actually sentenced. So they could be found guilty of a state charge. That doesn't matter. It's when the judge pronounces sentence, that next day is when the state picks up.
And does the state then reimburse the city for all the daily payments up until that time that they are convicted on a state charge?
I've been up on the city council. That would be wonderful if that happened.
Mm-hmm.
That is really, because really these are unfunded mandates from the state. They make the laws in Baton Rouge, and then, it's down here, and it's on the city or the parish until they're sentenced, but they don't go back. They don't go back, and they should, because it's a state charge.
So then the city's paying for both state and city prisoners pre-trial?
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
I'm sorry, pre-conviction,
Pre-sentenced.
pre-sentence.
Yeah.
Pre-sentenced is the best way to say it.
Okay. All right, well, that's surely a problem. I mean, is that something we can go to the state on?
It's
I
been
mean,
an
it
issue.
certainly
It's
certainly
been an
isn't-
issue for years.
This goes back to before, of course, Sheriff Gusman was on our side. It's been a problem, and it's
I'm
been
still on your
something
side.
that I didn't mean it like that. I meant in our office.
Sheriff Gusman helped us fight this when he was a council member.
That's what I mean, and it needs to be brought up again.
Okay, but apparently
See,
we didn't win that battle, huh?
No, because it's...
We've all
it's-
tried it. I tried it from the legislature even.
Right.
We've
It's
gotten
not just the
nowhere with
Orleans Parish. I don't mean to interrupt you, council member.
interrupting you, but all of us have worn different hats and have tried this for years. So it does precede all of us and all of our hats. It's time for us to
and
do
it's a
it.
battle that you're not going to win easily anytime soon.
Councilmember Guidry, just one point about that. We've even talked about even a percentage of that, not even the whole 5%. Some, anything would be a help because it's a tremendous cost.
One of the things that I've suggested in the past is that at the point where the district attorney accepts the charge, who is a state official, then that would be the point, or should be the point, where going forward, the state ought to pick it up.
Because they can say no, apparently. Apparently, they've said no to a lot of people for a long time, huh? Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to, I hear all the time about the city pays only $22.39, which is shocking. But there is the medical on top of that. And let me ask you about another figure, $5.5 million in, quote, other expenses. This is, of course, part of that settlement some years ago, court settlement. The $5.5 million that are other expenses, and I believe show in the as on behalf payments.
On behalf payments.
Okay. Is that part of what's in the budgeted amount, or is that separate also? Because if it's separate also, then it should be added to what the per diem is to say what the city is paying.
Councilmember, if you're looking at the second sheet of your summary, I think is what you're looking at. It's City of New Orleans inmate per diem, City of New Orleans medical costs, City of New Orleans court services. That's all we put in the general fund budget. Those other items are revenues that the sheriff has inside of his budget.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, though, Councilmember, that yes, there are some costs that are picked up by the city that are related directly to the operation of the jail, but I guess we really can't just focus on comparing, two numbers of the per diem, and I probably misspoke and put some confusion in there when I just said, let's make it, like the state is, because it's not. But to properly run, to properly man the facility, there needs to be an increase in that base per diem. But I did confuse a little bit when I just said, hey, let's bring it up to where the state is now in their base per diem, which is like, as you said, they're basically all they're paying. But it's not just about the number. I mean, it's there's a whole lot more expenses associated with the pretrial population than there is with a population that doesn't do the movements, hospital, court, everything from attorney visits to whatever. It makes it very labor intensive.
Okay. I can understand that the local prisoners are apparently, and pretrial prisoners are more costly. I just, would like it to become a clearer picture for everyone. The city, it's really kind of a serious black eye, $22.39, when in fact there's another 8.2 to 8.7 million that we're doing in medical and in all those other expenses, including insurance costs, health care, utilities,
Yes.
et cetera, that, if you add in that other 5.5 million, we're talking $34.31 a day for 2,000 prisoners. So I would just like the picture to be more clear. It'd be one thing to say the state pays about 27 and the city pays about 34, but the city's costs, because of the type of prisoner or whatever, are really much higher than 34. It's another to say, you know, the city only pays 22.39. So, yeah, you know, I just feel like I need to bring that out, having discovered it myself, so that the picture will be, I think, more clear and I think a little bit more fair to the city in that regard. Not saying, first, now let me go to the next thing, which is we shouldn't have a per diem. And I thought I made it real, I thought I made it real clear last year that I really expected the administration to take the year between last year when we, you know, discussed this very thoroughly and this year to use all their finance people and all of that to change it from a per diem to a budget, because this is a perverse incentive to keep people in jail. I'm not saying that's what the sheriff does, but we all know that. All the studies say that. I think we're one of only 2 places in the country that uses a per diem. And so it's wrong. It's not a healthy thing to do. And we had a whole, you know, year since the last budget. And the city council doesn't have a whole, you know, department of people who can do that kind of number crunching. We only have just our wonderful Barbara and Calvin, and that's really not their job. So I would just like to say I don't want another year to go by without us changing the budget. Yes, and I know you've agreed with that, right?
Yeah, and I just, I'm a little sensitive about this word, perverse. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but it doesn't sound good. I have no incentive to keep anyone in jail. None. You know, none. I don't control who comes to jail.
Yes, we understand that, Sheriff, and I know that you agreed last year when you and I spoke before
I said I'd
before
be
your
very
budget,
open
that
to
you
a
would
discussion
be,
about it.
right. And so we just got to get it done.
Yes, Councilmember, when we met with the sheriff about his budget in the CAO's conference room, we talked about that very thing. It is a goal of the Landry administration. It is more complicated than it may even sound. It really is, because there's a lot of legal issues here, and some of those other items that you talked about that don't particularly sound like per diem. We own the building over there. We're paying the light bill. Those
Right,
types of things
right.
have to be worked out. So it's not an idea that's not on the burner. It's just, it's going to take a lot more to do than I thought it might.
Okay, so how many people do we have working on that today?
Well, today we probably don't have as many people as we should working on it, but we will work on it. Yeah.
I mean, you know, I am certain that if we went from per diem to budget, we would have a much healthier system. The sheriff would be budgeted better, and there wouldn't be this question of the per diem and you know, making money by keeping people in jail, which I, Sheriff, do not say you are doing. I'm saying that that is what all the studies say. This kind of system is why it's wrong.
Yeah.
And
Councilmember, I could say that maybe in a distant past that might have been a thing even remotely, but as the sheriff said, and I really absolutely believe this, the sheriff does not bring people to jail. The sheriff does not release people from jail or release people from jail. He has very little control over that. So I don't know how you would really make money off of either part. If we bring them there, it costs us money. If we arrest people and bring them there, if we don't bring them there, we can't be charged for them. And if the judge lets them go, he lets them go. He doesn't keep them beyond their release date.
And Council Member, just to add on that, you've been at the meetings where they make it very clear that the sheriff's fast track program, which was not in effect before I became sheriff, has really resulted, I think it was like in a 0.2 tenths of a day stay for people that come in, 2 tenths of a day. These are people that used to stay the weekend or stay for a couple of days. So we're really doing everything that we can to try to minimize the time that people who shouldn't be in jail spend.
That's good. But we still need to go to the budget.
No, I
Right.
don't.
And I'm just certain that it can be done in a year's time. I'm just certain of that.
I'm certain it could be done in less time than that, actually.
Right,
Yes.
right, quite less. And, all right, so that point made. The next thing I want to ask about, again, is the consolidation of the civil sheriff and the criminal sheriff offices was supposed to create incredible efficiencies, and the civil sheriff, is got all those fees that they collect from civil court and the like for services and the like, and I can't really see in the budget where those revenues are. Could you?
We certainly have all of the revenues in our financial statements. This is for the purposes of the budget, and under the law, the city, in this case, the city, in most cases, the parish, is responsible for funding the operations of the jail and the sheriff's office, as well as the court. So I didn't really see that it would made much sense to put that in here, because it's your responsibility to fund the operations.
Then what's happening with the money that's being collected from the civil sheriff's work?
We actually use some of that money, but that's really taking a burden off of you that shouldn't be taken off of you, off of the city.
Okay, let me explain
I'm
what
just
we're
talking
doing.
legal matters. That's a legal. It's a legal. It's a law.
What's the law?
The law is that the parish is responsible for providing for the care, custody of inmates that are pre-trial until they're sentenced. And I can get you the
Okay.
quote on it. I can get you the statute.
Then are you saying that the revenues being made from what was the civil sheriff's work are not included in the revenues? You're now one office, one sheriff. That the revenues and expenditures and personnel, whatever, all of that is being kept separate?
Yes. And there's a good reason for it, because, for one thing, there was another law that was passed before I became the one sheriff. It said that those employees that were in the civil division are entitled to a different benefit and compensation package. So, I'm just trying to tell you what the law is. Now, change the law, do something with the law, but that's the law. And
Mr. Grant, can you address that? I mean, what is the administration's position with regard to, we've combined the civil and criminal sheriff, and I was just a private citizen when all that was going on, but I remember that one of the big things we were saying, everyone was saying, if you combine them, there's going to be these greater efficiencies, and kind of like criminal court was saying today, that civil court gets all the big fees, and in other jurisdictions, civil and criminal court are one, and so what civil makes helps criminal.
Yes.
We expected the same thing with the sheriff's office. When it became one sheriff's office, we would have only one sheriff, not two. We would have these greater efficiencies, and the civil sheriff, which was a revenue-producing business, would help with the criminal aspects of the sheriff's office. So what is the administration's position on this?
I wouldn't want to speak for the administration's position, other than this is my first time hearing that there is a separate law about how this is set up.
Yeah, I know. That's something we'll have to check into. Okay. Let me just say,
but
Sheriff.
Councilmember, if you look at the information that we provided you in our functional budget, all of the numbers are there. So for, if
We're-
the 2012 functional budget, the numbers are there. If you look under fees and commissions,
Yes.
but I'm just telling you that that 7,000,007 number, but I'm telling you, though, as a operating budget matter, it's the responsibility of the city to pay for the cost and treatment of the inmates. That's a law.
All right. What we're doing here, and you know, we've been doing this with, again, I'm going to use the Mosquito Control Board, but every agency, et cetera, if they are self-generating some funds and it winds up giving them a surplus in a situation where we have a general fund that cannot cover everything that it needs to cover, then we're looking at each of those departments and agencies and determining, well, are you capable of covering some of this yourself, and to what extent, whether it's a judicial expense fund, whether it's in the case of the Mosquito Control Board that they get self-generated funds because they do testing of chemicals for big companies, or whatever source it is, if it can help us stretch the dollars so that we can place some dollars elsewhere where it's needed and we presently can't place it, such as I've been using the coroner's office as a good example with dead bodies in refrigerator trucks, that we need to be able to look at all those possibilities, and that's what I'm trying to do here. It's simply that. So, and so then the fees and commissions is stated here. That's the $7 million, and then your expenses for running the civil sheriff's aspect of the operation are also in here.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I think that's everything I have on revenue. The electronic monitoring program is the next thing. It appears that we're decreasing the monitoring from $600,000 to $504,000, which is $96,000, and then we're increasing the per diem by exactly that amount. And do you know anything about why that is? Why we're taking $96,000 away from the monitoring, and no, that wouldn't be you, huh? And adding it to the per diem, that would create a per diem of the same amount that we're now paying of 2,012 prisoners a day, whereas we're saying that we're doing it at 2,000. Mr. Grant, do you know anything about that?
I'm not exactly sure what you're looking at.
Okay. Oh, okay, here we go. Description of funded programs. Funded electronic monitoring program. This is page...
Okay. Yes, I see it.
You see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
It's been reduced by $96,000 from last year. The electronic monitoring program, which I think we've heard from everyone involved that shouldn't happen, and that in fact it should be increased. And then the per diem, the care, custody, and control of inmate population has been increased by the same $96,000. Do you know anything about that?
It just seems like it's a budget balancing thing. It probably is just a line item thing because we have those two in two different line items. But I agree with you. The electronic monitoring gives us a lot more value for our dollar.
For our buck.
Yes.
Sheriff, is it your understanding that your electronic monitoring program is in fact being cut? Or you
Yes. That was my clear understanding, that it was recommended to be cut.
to the $504,000?
Right.
And do you know about the per diem going up exactly that amount?
I think what I understand is that they were trying to get the number in line with what the actual results were. So they estimate every year what they expect the population to be, and then they look at what the actual population is. So I think they just they adjusted the number for what the actual population is now.
That's what we're trying to do. And the population has been going up, and and when we were doing the budget, we had to make some adjustments to the per diem because of that.
Okay. Gee, I want to go in two different directions now. Why the population's gone up, but also staying on the electronic monitoring for just a minute. So let me do that. I know, Sheriff, that you had asked for an increase from $50,000 a month, which is what we had budgeted last year, to $75,000 a month. Could you tell us how many bracelets or whatever, what would that add to the program? And by the way, we've heard the program is being run very, very well, and we've heard that from all sources too, so that you'll know. But what would the $75,000 do? How would that increase the number of bracelets or monitoring you'd be able to do?
That could add up to in the neighborhood of about 50 more bracelets per month.
Yeah, so if it's 50 more bracelets, do you get a sense with the number of requests that you're getting from the judges, both juvenile and criminal court, that those if you had 50 more a month, that you'd be using them?
Well, let me let Colonel Urson answer that. I'm going to say yes, from what I know.
Yes, ma'am. There's no question that those 50 would go quick. Juvenile court would certainly pick up maybe almost half of that amount. The criminal court would take up a big chunk, and it still gives us a void for municipal court with them getting the state misdemeanors, including the domestic violence. And we're not going to be able to have a bracelet to put that defendant on it if he or she can make bond.
And approximately,
Just to add to that, Councilmember, we've also had instances where someone can pay.
yes, and we want to ask
Someone
about
can
that.
pay, and we put them on it. If we're at our budgeted threshold. Colonel Urson?
Yeah, Judge Sins in municipal court has put a couple defendants on that were able to pay for it. Certainly, criminal court, we've had defendants that have paid for it. Juvenile court, they just don't have the funds. The
Sure.
judges have determined to do that. We haven't had a lot of paid customers, but we did. But with the cut that is proposed, we'll lose 15 bracelets a day. In reality.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't think we can have that happen. I mean, I'm sorry, I do not mean to speak for anyone else. I apologize. But we're talking about what is the cost per day for the electronic monitoring versus the cost for a person to be in jail?
For an adult, it's $13.25. For a juvenile, it's $14.75.
We think there's probably somewhere, and because like you said, there are other costs associated with it, but clearly you're talking about this program alone is probably saving the city $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
No question. I mean, this is one of those no-brainers in terms of you pay for one thing and you pay a whole lot, or you pay a whole lot more for another thing.
Clearly, there's an increased cost to incarcerating someone. Clearly,
right. Okay. And
Well,
then if we
Councilwoman Guidry, if I may interrupt, we're not only paying more money, but we're paying more in lives.
that's right.
Because this is where we can rehab people.
right? They're not productive if
Exactly.
That's right.
they're
They're not keeping with their
They can't go to
jobs.
school.
Right. Not going to school. And then if we get to start pretrial services program sometime real soon, hopefully, then
I think they're close. I
we're-
understand they're pretty close.
right. And I hope there's going to be a resolution to where the interview location will be very, very soon. That would be wonderful. So with the pretrial services program, you're going to have probably more of a demand for the electronic monitoring. Isn't that
Criminal district court judges have expressed that, yes, ma'am.
okay? All right. Just wanted to bring that out. Thank you. Has the CEA on that, the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement between the city and the Sheriff's Office, has that been renewed? I know it was going to be expire in this month, I think.
Yeah, actually, I have it to sign, and I understand it's at the same amount as last year's. So, you know, but again, it's a funding thing. We get paid up to a certain amount, but it is on my desk to be signed at the same $50,000 per month as it was the previous year.
Okay. All right. Then let me go to the, as you know, the recent criminal justice working group we had, meeting that we had. Dr. Jim Austin presented a report, an update since his last report regarding the jail population, et cetera. And also he spoke at that meeting, and he stated that there has been what we've seen since January is a steady increase in the jail population, the local jail population, from about 1,800 to about 2,200. And he stated that although less people are being arrested, et cetera, the length of stay has been increasing significantly. Can you speak to that and why that is happening?
I left earlier. I left that meeting early because I had another appointment, but that's really not something within our purview. We don't control the stay of someone. That's the district attorney and the judges.
Okay.
It's not up to me. I can't let people out.
All right. Let me ask, what we're missing here is data. And Dr. Austin made it very, very clear that the institution of pretrial release programs will give us the information that we need to understand the jail population and the flux in the jail population, et cetera. So we know that instituting that program is very important to answering this question. But meanwhile, it seems if we could get data in a different manner than we are, that data would help us to understand it now and understand it up to now, so that we'll be able to determine our budgeting needs better. And I know the administration had asked some months back for us to produce a form that we could ask that be supplied with for you to fill out, for your office to fill out when the city is when you're invoicing the city. And I know that we gave the form, or whoever was involved in producing the form did the form some months ago. And Mr. Copland, maybe you can help us with this. Why do we not have that form being the form that is being responded to by the sheriff's office when they're being paid by the city?
So as of August, the sheriff has been providing a computerized file on a monthly basis to the administration with all the data. So that was what has informed Dr. Austin's most recent report, and we are now getting that monthly for the city.
Okay. Well, the thing is that on the length of stay table that Dr. Austin did, he couldn't respond as to what these categories, many of these categories were. So we couldn't understand, and he couldn't either. For instance, court release. There has been an increase from last year, meaning September of 2009 to August of 2010, to this past year, September of 2010 to August of 2011. There's been an increase of approximately 13 days in the length of stay for court release prisoners. And he couldn't say what that meant for us to be able to analyze this data. And so if this is the data we've been collecting since August, it's not the data that I know we requested on that form.
So I will, again, inquire with Dr. Austin. I believe we had a conversation about it, but I forget his particular answer. I think he's getting all the data that the sheriff has. And to answer the question that you raised, he'd either have to go to the court or somebody else to get that particular data. But I think we've gotten, for Dr. Austin, all the data that the sheriff's office produces that would be helpful. Now, that doesn't mean that that's a sufficient answer to your question, but I think that the owner of that information could well be one of the courts as opposed to the sheriff.
Yes, Sheriff.
But I'm going to take a stab at it. Similar to the question that we had before, that you had before about, and you were talking to the municipal court judges about why did the overall number of people that were put through the fast track program go down. Mm-hmm. And the answer was because we're not getting most of those people are coming in with summonses, not coming to jail. So we don't see them. So our overall number is lower. When you look at the length of stay, then what happens is that we are not getting to average out what that length of stay is. We don't include anymore the people that are getting arrested for out-of-parish warrants. We're getting a more serious, a more violent offender, and that means that it's taking longer. It's a smaller number of people that are in jail taking longer to get processed by the court and by the DA. If that number were larger and it included people that had, these out-of-parish warrants that could be disposed of really quickly, then the length of stay would go down. The average length of stay would go down.
I know we went over that in the meeting and came out with that somehow that didn't work out, and I don't know if it had to do with the fact that
That's my stab at it.
Yeah, no, we went through that possibility, and
It must have been after I left.
Yeah, this is a brain bender. Yes, thought I said that wrong, but a lot of it could be answered if we had descriptions of what these different methods of release are. For instance,
I'm not keeping it a secret.
Even
so
the other.
Anybody has any questions about it, I'll be happy, to help them find the answer.
Okay, but I know that the form that we had put together some months ago included much more descriptive categories than this, and much more broken down categories.
I'll ask Dr.
For
Austin.
instance, parole, probation, and
I will ask Dr. Austin to give us an explanation. My appreciation, what we did not want to do was have the sheriff respond to multiple different data requests from my office. So I asked Dr. Austin to consolidate all of that information to get every question that we needed answered so that we could request the data that was available. My fear in this particular case is that there's data that we want that is not contained in the sheriff's records with regard to some of those specifics. Now, maybe we need to work on the intake process for collecting more data so that there is more data available. But as I appreciate it, based on his knowledge of what the sheriff's database has, we are now getting the monthly updates that we requested on all of the information that he used, Dr. Austin used, to make his projections.
okay, but just to underscore the difficulty of this information here, there's a list of about 10 things that are methods of release, and it shows whether the length of stay has gotten longer in each of them. One of them is just the word release. Release. What is that? I mean, Sheriff, do you know what the category called release is? Because the length of stay has increased 20 days, or 19.4 days, for people with that method of release. And what is that method of release? Release. Do you know?
That's when they just get released. I don't know.
Yeah. See, so we can't do anything with this. I mean, Dr. Austin, we paid him good money to do this work, and yet we've got data that we cannot understand. So I would like to
It's not
get,
me, though.
that's these guys over here?
Well, I mean, if there's anything he doesn't understand, then, we'll help him find the answer.
Okay, so I'd like to check on the form that was put together at y'all's request some time ago, and then what actually does go out and what's actually coming in since August.
I'd be happy to get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Guidry, are you finished? Because we have other council people.
Yes,
I'd like
I'm
the
not
turns
quite.
to-
I'll rush. I'll rush past these.
All right. I was going to ask if we could give everybody else a quick turn and come back to you.
Oh, sure,
All right, because it's getting very late. If you don't mind.
sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Sheriff, I only have one question. And look, I know your job is difficult, and think that under the circumstances, you do a very good job. And we know that there needs to be a cooperative working relationship with all of us in the criminal justice system working together in order to solve the problems that we're confronted with. We've got some major problems in the system. There's no one part of the system that is going to be able to solve the problems that we're confronted with. And I know that is what we're doing with the Criminal Justice Committee and other entities that are involved in the system. But one of the things that we've talked about and that has been around the news and all has been one of security, where your budget has not been properly funded to provide the level of security that is needed, that was needed in the criminal court building and in other facilities. Can you just tell us where you stand with that, and what is the status on that area, and how would the fiscal 12 budget affect the security situation in the building?
Thanks. I do believe that the recommended budget is making a very good faith attempt to cover the costs that we incur for security at the criminal court. There's been an increase in the appropriation. We think, and of course it's dependent upon what actually happens. So if there's a capital case and the jurors have to be sequestered and they work into the weekend, those are the kind of things that can make the costs go up. So I think money-wise, in terms of the actual costs, are okay. I do think, and this is something that we've had some discussion about, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it some more, is there's some structural issues with the layout that we can improve that will make us work more efficiently and have a secure environment. And that's something that we're working on. But I do understand that there was some money coming from the courts fund that is going to supplement that cost of us providing the security for the courthouse. And we think it's going to be enough. Right now, I don't see that as an issue. The real issue is to try to attack some of these structural problems.
That concludes my questioning.
Thank you.
Any other council members? If not, back to Ms. Guidry.
I have a couple questions. Excuse me, Sheriff. One of the things, I think I'd asked this last year, and I'm like to have this information if it's feasible. You listed at the opening part of your presentation all the different programs that you offer within the jails, from GED testing, curfew center, DARE, crime activity patrols, HIV testing program. Could we have an amount on how much your office expends on each of these programs?
Yeah, I'll be happy to give that to you. Most of them that I listed off are grant funded. So like the female intensive incarceration program, grant funded, the curfew center, grant funded, but I'll be happy to provide that.
I'd like to provide that, yeah, as well as where the grant funding comes from. And do you have your own grant writing department?
One person
I'd like that information as well.
who does a whole lot of other stuff too.
Okay, I think that's valuable information. I'd like to see exactly what's being spent where. And then also, when is the facility that's currently being constructed going to open? What is the estimated date on that?
You're asking me hard questions. Estimated June 2012.
June 2012. Okay, and so we talked about this last budget cycle was the amount of money you
No,
brought
that's
up.
not, that, I just want to make sure that's not the housing facility.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the kitchen facility,
Well-
right? And office administration building.
No office.
Huge buildings. It's not just the kitchen.
Central plant.
Okay.
And warehouse.
So we talked about a lot of the money that is caused from the inefficiencies of the basic facilities and all the buildings in your complex. So are you going to realize savings?
Certainly.
Okay, so can we also have that amount that once this building is open,
Well,
how that's going to
you know,
promote efficiencies and save money?
Councilmember, I'm sorry I was interrupting you, but that's, we really don't have any firm numbers on that right now, so I can give you some projections, and it's depending upon some other things as well, so that's not an easy answer.
Okay. I'd still like to see what we've got in those terms. Yeah, from when it opens to, I mean, that's still, if it opens in June, that's still going to be 6 months, correct? Half of a budget. Thank you.
It's a complex answer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Guidry?
Staying on that line, I don't know if this is usual, but when you plan a building, don't they do an estimated cost of operation of the building?
Yes, they do. It was part of the master plan that we had, but the workings of the mayor's working group has really derailed some of the master plan that would have an impact on this. And I've said that in the committee that my real fear is that we're going to be forced to operate decrepit, inefficient facilities that are distant from the complex that we're trying to create.
Okay, but just staying on the buildings that you are building now, which were the subject of the first, run through the City Planning Commission and the council, the kitchen building and the bed building. Do you have projected cost of operations of those in terms of utilities and maintenance?
Yeah, but those, I'm trying again, those costs were spread out over more than just those two buildings. They were spread out over a third building, and that has an effect on the fixed cost of operating one. If you're only operating two as opposed to three, then your fixed cost is higher. And if you're forced to operate inefficient buildings that are distant from that perimeter, the costs become even higher.
Okay. Well, just with regard to the two buildings that have been authorized so far, could you extrapolate from what the whole master plan was and give us some idea as to the operating costs as Councilmember Palmer had requested?
Sure. Just like I said to Councilmember Palmer, it's just going to be it's not a quick answer.
Right, sure.
They're going to have to do some extrapolation and.
And looking at the proposed budget, staying again on the facilities here, you have a section called Plant and Maintenance, including capital outlays. And you have one for maintenance inmate housing unit of $62 million. Another one, maintenance other facilities, $10 million too. And then another one, storeroom warehouse, $38 million. is the storeroom dash warehouse, is that the cost of building the kitchen and,
It's part of the obligated money from FEMA.
okay, so that is like the one-time cost of building,
That's
construction?
what we're recognizing that those FEMA funds in the budget.
Okay, an inmate housing unit at 62 million, again, that is the cost of construction, the one-time cost of construction?
No. It's what we expect to expend for the year 2012.
In the construction?
Yes.
Okay, so that won't be the end of it, the cost of construction of that building?
Now, that building's going to take about 25 months to build.
Okay. All right, and then the maintenance, other facilities, 10 million too. Is that a construction cost also, or is that an ongoing maintenance cost for facilities?
It's not all ongoing maintenance. The ongoing maintenance is lower than that for the buildings that the sheriff operates.
So does
That
that,
includes some capital funds.
and again, those capital funds, those would be funds that are going to be paid through FEMA dollars?
No, that's through the Orleans Parish Law Enforcement District.
Through the law enforcement district. But again, one time and not something that the city would have to weigh in.
Right.
Okay. All right, that's good, thank you. And again, let me go back to that 5 million or 5.5 million that's in the settlement agreement one more time and say, is that included in the city, in what we see in the big book here? Is that in there anywhere?
It's not like a particular line item. It's like within fuel, there's an amount of fuel that goes to the sheriff. Within our health care costs, there's an amount that goes to provide for the sheriff's claims, that type of thing.
Oh, okay, so then
Workman's
there's
compensation.
wherever gas for all city vehicles.
Right.
Is
Jay
gas-
Palestina could tell you that of the fuel that he buys for $5 million, so much of it is for the sheriff's fuel.
Okay,
Yeah.
so and it's broken down in various places in this budget.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. All right, I understand that with regard to parole and probation violations, when ultimately someone is determined to have violated their parole or probation, the state then reimburses the sheriff for the time the person spent in jail while that determination was being made. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And does the sheriff's office then reimburse the city for those, for the amounts it's paid?
Yes, of course. Yes, we do.
Does that show on the invoice that you're
Yes, it-
crediting, or how many people are in for parole and probation violations and the reimbursement to the city from the state?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So what we do when we do the invoice, it has credits, and we identify what those credits are.
All right. Okay, good. Thank you. It's going back to the security question Councilmember Johnson was asking. A letter that the sheriff sent to the city on August 25th of this year references a CEA between the sheriff and the city, sheriff's office and the city, where the city agreed to increase the rate it pays to the sheriff's office for security services at public buildings, quote unquote. Are these security services separate or a part of the $2.6 million the city has appropriated for court-appointed services or court security services?
Those are separate.
They're separate.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. And is that CEA effective now?
I know we're doing the work, yes.
Okay. And where in the proposed budget is the cost of the city for those services?
Some
I think that would be a Mr. Grant question.
Yes, what he means is that they're doing security at like Methodist Hospital. That's in another budget code, like in Homeland Security, where the council pays for security with the council's drivers out of the council's budget. That's what he means. But
So again, it's going to be in separate places
it's in separate
the budget
places.
book.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not in the sheriff's budget.
All right.
Those are payments that are made by those agencies to the sheriff.
Okay. Let's see, OPISIS. Sheriff, I know you're on the executive board for OPISIS, so I imagine you're going to join the ranks of all the criminal justice agencies and groups saying that we need this and we need to fund it.
I've signed the letter. It is about creating better efficiencies and us working together better. So it was easy to agree to. I think they're doing some really good things. I think they, we're trying to work with them on this electronic police report submission. Another thing is the electronic subpoena. All of this is helping us work smarter and get more done.
Ms. Skidrick and Ms. Head asked, you have to go? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I'm down to the last couple
Oh,
of little
she's
tiny
leaving.
questions.
It's too late. She left.
Oh,
Yeah. I was trying to get her. I was trying to get all the council people that have to leave in their questions in.
I thought I thought we did that.
Oh, no, you know.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. All right. Local Government Budget Act that says that you need to have a public meeting to vet your budget. Have you all complied with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Advertisement, public notice.
All right.
We're audited on all of that.
Okay, great. And when during the year do you do that?
In December,
In December?
when we get a better idea of what we have,
Okay.
what we have to spend.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to throw in a question Councilmember Head had that takes off on something that I'd spoken to earlier, which is the combination of the civil and the criminal sheriff's offices. And the question being, why aren't we seeing a reduction in what the criminal side of the sheriff's office needs based on the revenue that's coming from the civil side, is her question.
Can't answer it any better than I answered it already.
Which is, I mean, I know you're
Go
saying
look at
that.
the law.
Oh, okay. With regard to inmates, paying for inmates, I understand that there's a legal obligation. And I guess what it comes down to is, does that legal obligation was there 3 years ago, and we were paying the same per diem 3 years ago, and now you've got the income from the civil sheriff. So is that creating an amount of revenue that you didn't have before, and where is it going?
Costs keep going up. Costs keep going up. I talked to you about the cost of pharmaceuticals. I'll talk to you about the cost of food. Talk to you about the cost of employee turnover. Costs keep going up. The cost of maintaining these buildings that the city ought to be paying for that they're not. And, our deficit, we're operating at a deficit. So that's really not a good argument.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Unless you want to change the law, you can change the law.
Okay, so then let me also say, looking at this 2012 budget, it looks like total expenditures, it's $175 million, and total revenue, I'm sorry, is $160 million, and total expenditures are $175 million, but that includes those capital costs. So if you deduct those from the expenditures, because they're not recurring costs, and they're not the responsibility of the city, and they're construction costs, then it winds up with actually quite a positive balance. Am I not correct? How is that wrong?
No, not correct.
Okay, how is that wrong?
I mean, I can go over all of the numbers with you if you want, but it's not, it doesn't come out that way.
Yeah, perhaps we could sit down with that because because that's what I'm seeing. 115 million is plant and maintenance, but that includes 100 million. That is those capital costs we just talked about a little while ago on the building, the construction. So if you take that out, that's a huge figure.
I'm not looking at what you're looking at, but it doesn't come out that way.
Okay, perhaps we can get together on that.
If it did, I'd be singing and be happy up down here.
All right. So we'll check in on that a little later. All right, performance measures is the last thing, the usual that I have to say about the performance measures. So I don't think I'll repeat it here. And that's all I have.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Only three of us left up here. Well, thank you, Sheriff, and I think all the questions have been asked. We have some public speakers, though, and in light of the time that it is, ladies and gentlemen, and the day that we've had, we're going to ask you to speak only for 2 minutes. So, Ada McMahon, and some of these got mixed up, and I apologize, but it's been a very long day. Ada McMahon. So if they're out of order, I apologize. Some weren't stamped, too, so it's hard for me to tell.
Hi, my name's Ada McMahon. I'm a New Orleans resident. I'm not a member of the coalition, but I'm here in support of the Orleans Parish Prison Reform Coalition and their efforts to end the per diem and limit the number of jail beds in Orleans Parish Prison to no more than 1,438. It's important to remember that people in jails are not criminals. Jails are where people are held before trial. The sheriff holds state prisoners in our jail because he chooses to. Any person in jail that is not brought there by the sheriff is presumed innocent. Eliminating the per diem funding system eliminates an incentive to incarcerate people arrested for minor, nonviolent offenses. Cheaper, more effective alternatives exist, such as diversion and treatment programs. These alternatives to incarceration have been proven nationwide to be more effective in reducing crime at significantly reduced costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Morrison.
My name is Ron Morrison. I'm also a resident of New Orleans and also speaking with the Orleans Parish Prison Reform Coalition. And I wanted to say that I find it really difficult to understand why, in an already dire economic state, we are here discussing how to better fund a group of people that's responsible for leading the world in per capita incarceration rates, costing the city millions. The money that the city would save through reducing the jail size can be better used for funding economic creation, job training programs, libraries, community centers, healthcare services, substance abuse treatment facilities, youth programs, and economic development opportunities. All of these things have been proven to be infinitely more effective in creating safer communities and families. I'd really appreciate it if someone would be able to answer why it is that we continue to place faith and dollars in OPP, diverting those funds away from community services, and using the prison as a solution for addressing problems that in part originate from an already underfunded social service system. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenesha Harris.
While we're waiting for her to come up, could the financial, Ms. Langham, are you the financial person? I'm just wondering on this budget, federal and state grants includes the cost of construction dollars in the revenue section. Federal and state grants.
What is the number you're looking at? 96, yes.
Yes.
It includes FEMA and some LCLE, Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement money.
All right, so over here on expenditures, where there's those costs, 60-something million and 30-something million, are they in part included in this state and federal grants?
Yeah, yes, and the LAD money.
Okay, I'd like
Orleans
to see
Parish
how
Law
that breaks
Enforcement
out.
District money.
Okay, I'd like to see how that breaks out. All right, thank you.
Kanisha? I'm sorry.
My name is Kanisha Harris. I'm a founding member of Breakout and a college student. Breakout is an organization that fights criminalization amongst the LGBTQ youth in the city of New Orleans. LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning. Breakout would like to express support for the Congress of Day Laborers and call for the end to the collaborations between ICE and the Criminal Sheriff's Office. Breakout sees a natural connection to the experiences amongst the Latino immigrants and in New Orleans and the LGBTQ youth, especially youth of color, because we share a lot of negative experiences with the criminal justice system and have found hard time finding jobs in the city. You know that we could save over $100,000 to stop holding these people on ICE holds, and we could spend the money on job placement programs for all youth, including transgender women like myself, so they can stay off the streets, so they won't turn to survivor crimes. We could also fund GED programs for people to be more qualified for jobs, because nowadays that, you know, they need high school diploma or GED to be more qualified for a job. And there are other people who want to aim higher to go to college. You can also fund the GED programs for people who want to go to college. I'm just like, all of this just reminds me of a time where my former middle school principal, and who is now the current superintendent of Orleans Parish Schools, when he spoke in my sister's high school graduation, he said that they figure out jail size by the reading levels of third graders. Now, if this is true,
Your time's come to an end, Nisha, I'm sorry. Want to end that sentence?
yeah. Now, if this is true, then why not invest in citywide educational programs and after-school programs than building a bigger jail?
Thank you. Wes Wayer.
My name is Wes Ware. I'm the director of Breakout. National studies have shown that LGBT youth of color are disproportionately represented in jails and prisons across the country. Despite the money that the City Council allots to Orleans Parish Prison, the facility suffers from extreme levels of violence and sexual abuse. LGBT young people are at higher rates of rape and sexual assault, and there's little classification system for people who might be more vulnerable. To be clear, we're not asking for a special gay tier of the jail, but rather a safer jail for everyone. National studies have shown that putting people on special gay tiers actually make them more unsafe and denies them the access to services as other people in the jail. We wanted to speak to City Council because funding the jail on the per diem basis, where the Sheriff's Office is reimbursed $22.39 a day for each person held in OPP, gives more incentive to incarcerate more people. And the larger the jail is, the more people that are in there, the worse the conditions will be, especially for LGBT young people. Instead of funding a very big jail like this, Breakout would like to see public funds diverted to programs that have been shown to improve public safety, especially for LGBTQ youth in New Orleans, such as job training programs for youth, educational programs for transgender women, housing opportunities for LGBT young people who've been kicked out of their homes, and city-funded mental health programs, especially for LGBT youth of color.
Thank you. Eloise, and I cannot read the last name, I apologize. Eloise. Eloise? Oh, it's Williams. Oh, it's you. Oh, Miss Williams again? Okay. How could I not read you? On Wickens Drive, of course. Hello. So I didn't notice you. You look like one of all those kids out there, Eloise. I didn't notice you.
No, I'm not. Hi. How y'all doing? How y'all doing this evening? Talking about this prison system. I don't know people. As an adult and as a person who, community activist, who then almost tore Gusman door down because of the unjust thing that happened down there in that prison system. But this is a question I want to ask. Because when our young people get locked down, there's a say of selling. They have to purchase merchandise. These merchandise cost money, right? When these people purchase this merchandise and they purchase it in a quantity, where do this money go? And I also want to talk about the system with the gays. We have more gays come out of prison. We have young boys go into prison, but when they come out gay. Well, that's a problem. That's a big problem that people need to be looking at serious. You go in as a young man, but you be tampered with. And I'm sorry they want to demolish Charity Hospital because Charity Hospital done work on many of these young children that been abused in the system. And go in there for a misdemeanor and get a lifetime of problem. We have a deep, dark secret here in this city, a deep, dark conspiracy that need to be addressed to the fullest. Now, that's my say. I just want to give y'all food for thought. It go deep, and we need to be looking at it deep because we got proof of everything. And there's a sale that go on in the jailhouse. Where the money?
Thank you, Ms.
They don't give it to the young men when they come out, so where the money go?
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Ask question.
Robert Goodman.
My name is Robert Goodman. I went to Safe Street Strong Communities. I also is part of the OPP-RC Coalition, Orleans Parish Coalition. I'm here today because I'm concerned. I just want to talk about, for every one bed reduction in OPP saves the city about $11,900 in operating expense for the jails. Keeping a high bed count and a per diem funding system encourage over-incarceration to maintain prison funding. Over-incarceration divert public funds from other use that have been proven more effective at creating a safe community. Every dollar that is spent on per diem funding for a too big jail that encourage over-incarceration results in fewer breadwinners in communities, fewer tax dollars coming into the city, and greater need for service and support for families and loved ones on the outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Sister McQuarrie.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Allison, and I just want to encourage the council today to take an opportunity to make change to the system to make it more just today. I mean, you have the opportunity to end the per diem, and you have the opportunity to keep the cap at 1,438 beds. And with the jail expanding, even if FEMA subsidized the construction cost, I would just like to ask who would pay for the operational cost and the maintenance cost of a larger jail as it's built. And the current jail costs about $53 million, and the city of New Orleans and our taxpayer dollars pay $25 to $30 million of this. And I think there's more effective use of these funds, and I was wondering how the sheriff would like to fund the expansion in regards to the operational costs and maintenance of it, because money will be diverted from our other social service programs that are currently underfunded or unfunded. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Dudley.
Hi, my name is Christina Dudley. I'm with Citizens for Police Ethics, and I am for increasing the amount of funding going to the jail system. Jails that are underemployed and under budgeted, they end up with food that's inedible, with all kinds of violence, overpopulation, and just cause a great deal more anxiety and trouble for the inmates. You need an adequate supply of funding in order to provide for the care of the inmates, in order to keep the staff on a positive note so they don't have attitudes towards the prisoners. I really think that a jail that is underfunded is a major headache to the community that can last for decades. I approve of his asking for more money. I think it's in the best interest of our people. And I think we need to look at the overall future of the program. Now, he may need more money this year, but next year he may need less money. And I think we need to be a little flexible on what we allot to him. I went through his sheets online. I saw no indications of him giving himself any type of bonus money or money that was unused, disappearing. There was money left over, and that money didn't start going down until after Katrina's effects had gone into play and he'd run out of resources already stashed up. I spent time in the jail. I was in the holding facility only. I found that the guards were very polite, very courteous, and although the jail was old and maybe a little grungy, it by no means compared to some of the jails I've seen in New Mexico with knife fights and rats running around.
Thank you.
It could have been much worse.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dennis Soriano, is that correct? Soriano?
Mi nombre es Denis Soriano y soy líder y organizador con el Congreso de Jornaleros.
My name is Dennis Soriano and I'm a leader and organizer with the Congress of Day Laborers.
Y una de las cosas que he estado escuchando, por ejemplo, este problema del presupuesto es que tiene que pagársele al sheriff por día.
And I think that one of the problems that's been pointed out about the budget as it is the per diem.
Y esto lo que trae es un incentivo más para el sheriff para que pueda tener más a la gente después que se han terminado sus cargos.
This does create an incentive for people to remain in jail once their sentences are done.
Y eso lo podemos ver, por ejemplo, con los pedidos de hold de migración. Por ejemplo, esto es algo que la migración le hace un pedido al sheriff, ¿no? Y el sheriff decide someterse a ellos y él bien sabe que esto es voluntario.
And we see that very clearly with hold requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, where ICE is asking the sheriff to please hold people voluntarily past when their time is due.
Y el sheriff dice que esto lo está haciendo por seguridad, pero ¿seguridad para quién? Si somos una comunidad que estamos siendo perseguida y estamos bajo ataque.
And the sheriff says he's doing this because of public safety, but public safety for whom? For a community that is working but is also being consistently harassed by the police.
Y por ejemplo, quiero dar unos pequeños datos que tengo. Por ejemplo, en el 2010, de 199 personas que fueron detenidas, 165 fueron detenidas por cargos menores o cargos de tráfico.
I just want to point out some numbers. In 2010, from 199 people who had hold requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, 165 of those people were for municipal offenses or for traffic tickets.
Y en los primeros 6 meses, de 86 personas que fueron detenidas, 68 personas fueron detenidas por la misma causa.
And in just the first 6 months of 2011, out of 86 people, 68 people were for also minor offenses or traffic tickets.
Y de 12 personas que fueron allá detenidas por felonías, al 4% de esas personas se les quitaron los cargos completamente. Entonces eso muestra que es un 33%, que es una exageración, ¿no?
And out of the 12 people who were arrested for felonies, 4 of those people had the charges completely dropped. That's 33% of them.
Thank you. Thank you. Time's up.
Y nada más,
I'm sorry,
con
time's
todo
up.
respeto, he necesitado traducción,
I'm
¿no?
sorry.
No sé si me pueden dar 30 minutos nada
I'm
más.
sorry, I needed translation. If you could
No,
give me 30
I'm
more
sorry.
seconds.
Time's up. We've been here a long day, and we have more people to speak. I'm sorry.
That does mean that people that don't speak
Santos.
English don't have the opportunity to speak, ma'am.
Santos Alvarado.
Hable más breve y hable.
Mi nombre es Santos Alvarado.
My name is Santos Alvarado.
Soy miembro del Congreso de Jornaleros de Nuevo León.
I'm a member of the Congress of Day Laborers of New Orleans.
Hace poco menos de un año estuvimos aquí en este salón.
About less than a year ago, we were in the same room.
Veníamos de una vigilia que hicimos en las afueras de las oficinas del sheriff
We came from a prayer vigil that we did outside of the sheriff's offices
en apoyo al voto por las 1.438 camas
in support of the ordinance with 1438 beds
y apoyo a 2 compañeros que fueron detenidos más tiempo de lo que la ley estipula.
and in support of 2 gentlemen who were in jail for longer than the law allowed them to be.
Es el caso de Mario Cacho, detenido por 6 meses, y Antonio Campo por 3 meses.
That was Mario Cacho for 6 months and Antonio Campos for 3 months.
Desde esa fecha hasta hoy han cambiado algunas cosas,
From that day until now, some things have changed,
pero hay muchas cosas que siguen ahí.
but there are many things that remain the same.
Por ejemplo, les podemos citar el caso de la compañera Delmi
For example, we can talk about the case of Delmi
y del compañero Alejandro Díaz,
and Alejandro Diaz,
que aún hoy, en este tiempo, fueron detenidos por más de 48 horas en la cárcel.
who in the last year have been held for over 48 hours on the ICE hold request in the last year.
Entonces, el sheriff Gusman decide someterse y tiene más de 48 horas a estas personas
And so the sheriff has decided to submit to these requests and is holding people past the 48 hours.
y gastando el dinero de la ciudad,
And he's using city money to do
el
this.
de ustedes, el de nosotros.
Your money, our money.
Ya es hora que deje de separar familias
It's time for him to stop separating families
y usar el dinero de nuestros impuestos
and use the money from our taxes
para perjudicarnos a nosotros mismos.
to negatively affect us as a community.
Ese dinero que lo utilice para algo más útil, que no sea aterrorizar a la comunidad hispana.
That money can be used for something more useful than to terrorize the Hispanic community.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Cotton.
Hello, my name is Deborah Cotton, and although I wear many hats here in New Orleans for today's purposes, I am speaking for myself. I'm a resident at 1318 Ursuline. The Councilwoman Guidry and Councilwoman Head both asked questions to the sheriff regarding where the money from the civil sheriff office, where those revenues are being allocated to. And the response from the sheriff is that we're responsible, the city is responsible for paying the operating costs, and citing a law as a reason not to answer the question about where those funds are actually allocated to. There's also a law called the Local Government Budget Act that requires the sheriff to show all sources of revenue. And I find it very disingenuous for the sheriff to refuse to answer this question. And quite honestly, I find this stonewalling and attitude of entitlement around our tax dollars to be very offensive. This is not free money. It's not monopoly money. It's taxpayer money. And we deserve an answer. We deserve more forthrightfulness and more transparency from the public official that we elected to manage these tax dollars. So, I want an answer to that question, and you want an answer to that question, and I think we all want an answer to that question. And I would ask that the sheriff conform with the Local Government Budget Act and give us that answer before these budget hearings are over on the 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Nath again on a different subject, which is allowed.
As a New Orleans resident and as a human being, I'm really upset about what happened, and so I'd like to give Dennis. My name is Pam Nath. I live at 2652 Ursulines Avenue. I'd like to give the portion of my time to Dennis because I'm really uncomfortable with what happened, and if there's time left, I'll take it.
Thank you. Yo lo único nada más que quería agregar es que otras ciudades han entendido en qué forma se debe usar este dinero.
And I just want to clarify that other cities have understood how this money should be used.
Por ejemplo, la ciudad de Santa Clara, California, pasó una ordenanza donde han decidido que no se van a someter a los hold de migración, San Francisco y Chicago. Entonces nosotros, ¿por qué no podemos seguir este ejemplo y usar este dinero como para lo que estaba diciendo la gente de Breakout o las otras comunidades, usar esto para algo útil?
And so other cities have passed ordinances in the last couple of months doing exactly this. Cities like Santa Clara, like San Francisco and Chicago have passed ordinances deciding that they're not going to submit to hold requests from immigration. And so we should be able to follow their example, save this money, and use the money in other ideas that some of the breakout members presented to this council today. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was still like 30 seconds. I'd like to just thank Councilperson Guidry for her leadership about the per diem, and also just want to say that there would be multiple OPPRC members here to talk about the 1438 cap and the per diem.
Thank you. Marjorie, excuse me, I have no voice. Marjorie? I'm running
Thank
out.
you. I'll try to be brief. I'm Marjorie Esmond. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Louisiana. And with respect to the per diem, the City Council of New Orleans has the authority to end the per diem system. And the City Council of New Orleans should end the per diem system as quickly as possible. It is outdated, it serves no useful purpose, it is counterproductive, and it can and must be put to an end. I say that coming from the organization that initially sued to implement the per diem system. That was a long time ago, and I will now be happy to help put it to bed. And on another matter, it has been 2 years since the Department of Justice issued a scathing report about Orleans Parish Prison. To date, we have absolutely no idea what changes have been made, what is the status of the Justice Department investigation. The Justice Department at that time had indicated that certain changes needed to be made within 90 days or a lawsuit would be filed. It has not been filed. We don't know what's going on, and I think the people of New Orleans have the right to know to what extent the sheriff has complied with the mandates of the Justice Department. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you, Sheriff and Deputy Sheriffs and Slangman, excuse me, and all of you. And we'll be back in touch as we begin to bring this to a conclusion. Thank you. Is there a move to adjourn? Second? Everyone's in favor at 5.